That one's on.
That one. Oh, okay, that switches that way.
There we
Okay,
go.
that's the issue.
Yep,
Okay.
but it was green. All right, so
Yeah.
let's call it in here.
I was making
I haven't
this
turned
is
them on
on.
yet.
Okay.
Yep.
So are we ready to go?
Just give us 1 minute. Mark's going out.
We're waiting
coming
for
back
Mark
in
to
again.
hop back.
Okay.
So for the board statement, that goes at board comments at the end, I'm assuming.
I would suggest opening the meeting with that.
Okay.
And I just need to make a few people presenters. So if you go to present and you're not able to, just let me know. But my machine here is also a bit slow, so I'm going to move people to be able to do that right now, and we should be good then.
I'm just trying to figure out.
I still show as not being able to present.
Yep, I'm just getting to you.
Okay.
Hi, Denise.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us. If there's anybody on here who was planning to be on for the PTSA, we will be tabling you for tonight. And I'm going to admit Reva so then that she can hear that.
So we'll need somebody to, I guess I can just say what those changes are and then put the agenda forward.
Yep. Reva, if you just joined us, PTSA is going to be moved. We're doing a couple things to shorten our meeting just a bit tonight, so we are going to move you to the 8th.
Okay, no worries.
I apologize for the short notice. Due to some of our community things, we're going to just shorten our meeting a bit.
Absolutely, I understand. Good luck, guys. We'll see you guys on the 8th then.
All right. Thanks, Reva. We'll be in touch.
Will do. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Are we ready to go? Let me check them out. Yep. Okay, hopefully we've got everybody ready, and John is going to put us live here in just a second. I was going to be better dressed, but I didn't make it home. Such is our day. Okay, and we are live. So President Bleasner, I will turn it over to you to open our meeting.
Thank you. All right, good evening, and I would like to call to order the June 1st, 2020 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Please let the record reflect that all board members are present and participating remotely. All meeting participants will be joining this meeting remotely in alignment with current proclamation issued by Governor Inslee. The board meeting will be live streamed and viewable on the district website. If you are unable to live stream the meeting, viewers can call 425-936-2805 or 425-936-2809, conference ID 471683 to listen to the meeting. Regular board meetings will continue to be live streamed on Lake Washington School District website and posting for viewing within 2 days. Before we begin our meeting with the approval of the agenda, I'd first like to just take a moment. These have been some trying times at this moment in time, and the board does have a statement we would like to make in regards to the current happenings. So if I could just take a moment to begin. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. We say their names not because they are the only three. They are three of many whose lives were taken. And sadly, their names are now part of our history as a country that should be better because of the promise that was put forth that all people are created equal. However, this ideal will continue to be just an ideal, an aspiration. If we only see these names of Black women, men, and children as sad markers in our history instead of a call to action to make change for a better future that is equitable for each and every one of our students. We understand as a board that silence is comforting for some and deafening for others. We understand that silence is also complicity. If we are silent, we are implicitly saying that the lives of Black people are no less than or do not matter. We believe that the lives of Black people do matter. We believe that it is our responsibility to condemn and speak out against discrimination, hate, and racism. As writer and activist Alice Walker stated, look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming. In the present, we acknowledge we do not have all the answers. In the present, we understand that those furthest away from economic, racial, and/or educational justice are in those places and positions because of inequities inherent in our structures, systems, and institutions. Our strategic plan and board values speak to the future that we are constructing as a district with access to opportunities for all students, not just to survive, but to thrive. As a district with socio-emotional learning supports that are differentiated and culturally responsive. As a district where students, staff, and families are heard and valued for their individual and collective perspectives, knowledge, and histories. As a district where students will choose their trajectories and futures because the district staff support not only our students' realities, but their hopes and dreams through continuing our work to be a place with a diverse, high quality, and culturally responsive workforce. We will be able to do the aforementioned work through being listeners and learners, through our intentional and many times uncomfortable work. We will collectively build a broader and more responsive community wherein our values, beliefs, and actions exemplify the brighter future, where inequities have been eliminated, creating a new reality for every single student within the Lake Washington School District. So thank you for allowing that. There's a lot of work ahead and what we have going forward, and we will continue to work in this area that we do, and we welcome the efforts of our community in doing so and our students in being part of that solution going forward. So with that, we do have the agenda this evening. We have made a few changes. We will be removing the recognitions for the PTSA that I'll put on the June 8th agenda. And then everything else will continue as forward. So I will now entertain a motion to approve the June 1 agenda as amended.
So moved.
So moved.
It's been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Stewart to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none and only ayes in that, the motion carries. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. At this point, we have not received any written public comments, so that we will move on to the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm going to step in just a moment there, President Bleaser. We have 2 public comments.
It appears we have had a few, so thank you. Will you read those for us?
I would be happy to. The first one is from Lisa Guthrie. What are the district's plans for providing summer services to students on IEPs? A recent announcement on the district Facebook page mentioned reading instruction for grades K-3 and catch-up credits for high schoolers. Nothing about services for students with extended year written into their IEPs, nor about catch-up services for the hundreds of kids in preschool through Transition Academy who have been denied services legally mandated under their IEPs since schools closed in March. In addition, the announcement stated that the summer school will be mainly conducted remotely. Remote instruction is suboptimal for kids, but especially for kids with special needs. It needs to be a priority, especially as the external situation is now far more favorable than it was back in March and April. Finally, as a mother of 4 LWSD students, including one on an IEP, I want to echo Director Carlson's comments in the last board meeting around communicating with empathy. This empathy is lacking everywhere, but especially for those of us who have kids with special needs. We've been thrown into the roles of not only teachers, but also therapists, trying desperately to hang on and keep our kids from falling further behind. Yet our kids are barely mentioned in most communications when they're not left out entirely. We need to hear that you see us and see our kids, because it doesn't feel that way right now. Our second public comment is from Susan Cousins. For some students in the district, getting back to class in the summer is critically important to their early childhood development, including some of special needs students. I urge the district to be considering those who those students are and offering them the opportunity to go back to school for a summer session. The district is out of compliance with federal legislation to provide these students with the education they need. A summer session would begin to close the gap. Denmark started sending students back to the classroom in mid-April, working from the youngest students up. Their experience has been very positive. I would encourage the board to watch the short BBC documentary on the experience, and I will forward that link to the board. to ask the district to study that experience and definitely to bring some students back to the classroom for summer. So those are our 2 public comments, and I hope they are also tuning in tonight because part of our update will include some of that information. Those are the 2 that I have for tonight.
Thank you very much. So yes, we will be continuing with the summer update, and we'll be able to have a little more on that discussion on that. Our next item is the consent agenda. So I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval. Second. Sorry, not on my game tonight.
It is moved by Director LaLiberte and seconded by Director Carlson to approve the consent agenda. Dr. Stavum, could you poll the board?
Yes. Director LaLiberte.
Yes.
Director Sage.
Yes.
Director Carlson.
Yes.
Director Stewart.
Yes.
President Bleasner.
Yes. And Dr. Stavum, could you please just summarize the donations that were in the consent agenda?
I will. Tonight, our donations include the amount of $3,793.74 from the Lake Washington Schools Foundation, and from our PTSA, the amount of $1,500 for a total of $5,293.74.
Thank you. We always appreciate the community's support in being able to bring these great things forward for our kids. So our next item, as we move on to the non-consent agenda, as was mentioned, is the summer programs and an update on that. So we actually have 2 components to that, both the athletics and activities and then summer school and services. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Stavum, and she will have those presented. Thank you.
Thank you. The first one focuses mostly on extracurricular version of summer programs and activities, athletics, and our use of facilities. One of the things that we know is that this hasn't been a typical spring, and this isn't a typical time going into summer. Right now would be a time that we would be busy everywhere with our fields in use, our tennis courts, our outdoor facilities, and kids in sports and activities. And then, of course, there are things that happen over the summer, weight training, camps, opportunities for kids to kind of have that bridge between spring athletics and that fall season. So we wanted to give you an update on all of those components. And so John Applegate is going to start us off. This also includes some information from the WIAA in terms of eligibility and kind of that nexus between athletics and students' eligibility. And, you know, we have a lot of students who unfortunately have missed an entire spring season. And that's bad for all of our kids because we know how important activities is, but it's also really concerning for those families who have students who were probably headed towards a collegiate career and potentially even beyond. So John's going to give us some information tonight, and if there's anybody else presenting with John, I want to make sure that I have them as presenters.
Thank you, Dr. Stavum. I think I'm alone on this, but if anybody wants to jump in, they're welcome to. So as Dr. Stavum pointed out, today would be such a bustling day especially at our high schools, because today would be the first day that all the sports could get together, and there would be football and basketball and volleyball and all sorts of activities taking place. So we had our spring athletes really in both our middle schools and high schools and activities as well, really take a shot with the spring, and today that shot gets across the bow for a whole other group of kids and coaches and advisors that are really going to feel this. And so I want to share my screen here and see if I do this correctly. No, yeah, and kind of go through a PowerPoint with regards to what we're looking at for summer. Now, we had hoped to have a little more guidance at this point from the WIAA. They have put together a plan that is being reviewed by the Department of Health right now. I'd hoped to get that information back this last week, and that did not happen. So we don't necessarily have it laid out for the entire summer just as of yet, but based on the 4-phase plan of Governor Inslee's, which the plan for the WIAA is pretty consistent with, I think we're in a pretty good idea of where we're going to be going. One of the things about our summer philosophy is as this board knows, we formalized our process a lot last summer from where we had been. The traditional summer activities would be coaches could get together with their kids, and with the exception of football, we really didn't regulate it, which wasn't best practice. So we formalized that process last year. And then here we get to our year to see how we did and make the necessary adjustments, and we're having to modify. In the past, the summer philosophy has been a lot about, of course, engaging kids with the healthy activities, but a lot about preparation for the next year and planning and player development. We kind of have to change that philosophy a lot this summer. And so the 4 bullets you see here are really what we're trying to focus on when we get the opportunity with our students, is to re-engage students with school. And this is not just athletics, this is activities. You'd be amazed about, or you probably wouldn't be amazed, knowing our students, of how chomping at the bit all of our students are to plan for next year, whether that's securing prom venues for next year, or planning their outdoor ads, all the different things that are next year. People are so anxious to get back to that sense of normalcy. They want to plan those things because that feeds their soul to do that. And so we want to engage all of our students, not just the ones participating in athletics, and make connections. We want to reestablish that connection with their advisors, their coaches, just like we want to do with their teachers. We also know that kids are dying to be active. I live in a house with twin 7-year-olds that really want to get out and do things every day, and we get lots of messages from our community about when we can open things to let kids get out there and be active, and we know that's a real part of their social emotional growth as well. But at that same time, we also have to talk about minimizing risk and making sure that the actions we're taking are consistent with the guidance that we're being given by the governor's orders, and also taking care of the safety and health of our students and our community. So we have some regulations that are a little new this year. One being the school closure. As everybody on this meeting knows, our schools are closed through June 19th, and that includes our facilities. The WIAA, which usually only regulates football in the summer with limitations on number of practices, this year we're waiting for that guidance where they're going to put a little bit more regulation on. There's an interest by a lot to have it be fairly consistent throughout the state. As we know, there are counties that are further along in this process, and coaches, being the competitive people that we know they are worried about other people being ahead of the game with them. So the WI is trying to put in some limitations that will go across the state to try to level the playing field as much as possible. But also, as Nick Hoffman, who's the WI director, pointed out, we don't want to not let kids engage that have the ability to engage. So we're kind of waiting for some guidance from the WI on that. And then, of course, the regulations of the 4-phase plan of the governor. So phase 1 is where we are right now. We are staying home still. There's a process for the modified phase 1, which I believe King County would have to go to first. But our facilities, per governor's orders, will remain closed through June 19th. And I know that board members received these questions, and I know that Dr. State, Dr. Holman, and myself, and principals from parents on when can we open our tennis courts, when can we let people walk around the track. And we have people that want that same physical activity that we know is good for our students, it's good for our community as well. But per governor's orders, we will be keeping those closed through June 19th. As far as our engagement, what we're doing is continuing what we had with our spring coaches. Our spring coaches were using district-approved technologies to engage with students, to keep them feeling like they're part of the team. For a lot of students, this is a really strong connection for them for school, and so we wanted to keep that option open with our spring coaches. We will be moving that on with our other off-season coaches as well for the summer to have the option to create those engagement opportunities. Our mantra that we've used is that any activities that we're talking about with kids virtually need to be optional, they need to be individual, and they need to be off-site. Basically means no kids required or expected to do anything. Anything students are going to be doing athletically, they're going to be doing individually, And since our facilities are closed, they're going to take place offsite from our facilities. So that's what we did with our spring coaches. We'll be carrying that through June 19th with all of our coaches. And again, for minimizing risk, there's just absolutely no in-person contact and no group gatherings. As we move into phase 2, we're faced with a few more questions. If we move into phase 2 before June 19th, we still have the limitation of our facilities being closed per governor's orders. I think we've seen that the governor has modified some things where he thought where his task force thought it was able to do, and if that's the case, then we'll make those necessary adjustments. So once we get to June 20th, we'll need to make the decision. We'll make the decision before that on what we're going to be doing with our facilities, because we would be allowed in phase 2 to meet in groups of 5 or less, not including the instructor. And so that might open the door for tennis courts. That might open the door for track for community use. There are pitfalls to that, because unlocked gates mean that people are like we've talked about, are going to be ready to get in there, and there could be some management issues that we need to address to keep the groups smaller. With our coaches and advisors, we need to stick with our same rules under phase 1. It's really an unrealistic expectation for coaches and advisors to be able to get together with groups of 5 kids or less, and include everybody. And include everybody that wants to. There's just not enough time in the day for some of the sizes of our programs. So we would continue with the optional individual and offsite activities. And again, for minimize risk for our school personnel during phase 2 is no in-person contact or group gatherings. As we move to phase 3, we would then, which allows groups of 50 or less to get together, we would open up our facilities for community use. Of course, all the guidelines and expectations are going to have to be met as phase 3 outlines. But for example, the city of Redmond is going to begin to schedule our fields. Once we get to phase 3, they're not doing anything in phase 2 as well. So we're going to provide that opportunity for our coaches and advisors to meet with students in those smaller groups. And we're going to be switching for well-being, moving from the optional individual and offsite to really optional open fields, open gyms, open weight rooms. And club advisors who are, I shared the other day that meetings with our activities coordinators really fill my cup, because they're just talking about the excitement that the kids have and this can-do attitude, and yes, we're coming back. We want to let them get together too, so it's not all about just getting the athletics together. The well-being goes far beyond just the physical activity. It's that filling of their cup and giving them hope that things are going to be getting better, and they're going to participate in helping that get better. So this is kind of the philosophical twist that I was talking about at the beginning, is that idea of getting groups together to really improve their skills and get better at their specific sports. And really now it's just about re-engagement, and it's about getting them out there doing physical activities. And sure, if you have an open gym, there's going to be a basketball and volleyball and things out, but it's more about getting together and having that healthy physical activity and really coming back together as a community. And minimizing risk, obviously, we're going to still follow the phase 3 plans. We're going to practice social distancing. We're going to maintain good hand hygiene and reinforce those values as we go through that phase, making sure our coaches do that as well. And then comes the big question mark, and that is phase 4 or a fall return. Should we get to phase 4 by the time of the fall? Obviously, if we do, our facilities will continue to be open for school and community use, and that number of people being able to meet will be lifted. And this is where the WI is really going to have to, they're going to be making the decision on what our fall sports are going to look like as far as a competition. There's a number of options that are on the table. I wouldn't say this list is all inclusive, because I'm sure there's some other ideas that are floating out there that the WI is considering, but these are the ones that they've highlighted. The first one there being the best possible option is that we're back to normal. When we get to the middle of August, and we're going to resume our fall schedule. Some of the options around there are offering lower risk sports only, things like tennis, golf, cross country, where you could really put some measures in that had people separate, but they're still getting out there with an opportunity to compete. And then sports that didn't have that ability, maybe those sports wouldn't take place, or maybe they would be moved to the third item there is moving them to an alternate season. So football in the spring, I will be straight, that's not real well received, but it's one of the things that are on the table. Volleyball to the spring is another, because it's an indoor activity that might not be ready to go in the fall, and moving that to the spring. Another option is starting the fall season earlier. Phase 4 comes, and maybe get things started a little earlier in August, shorten the season, and have things be completed before the Thanksgiving break. And then, of course, the last option you see there is the one that we had to go with this spring, is to get rid of the season altogether, because we're just not there, and that would probably lead to questions about what the winter season would be looking like. So our middle school sports are included in that. Our middle school sports, we haven't ever done anything formally in the summer, but their fall sports, they get together. So we'll be looking for some other ways to, within these regulations that we get for high school sports, because we know that the middle school sports are really important for those kids and really important for those parents for their social and emotional growth. I talked really fast and went through all of them and didn't really have good pause for questions, so I'm fixing that right now.
Let's use our hands up feature. Anybody have any questions? Ooh, and I'm getting feedback from somebody's microphone. This is important stuff, and it's very difficult trying to make plans for the fall that would normally be well underway when we just aren't sure what our parameters are going to be. So John has done a great job of collaborating with others across the state and within our district, and we want to be able to offer things as quickly as possible, but as safe as possible. Siri, you have your hand up?
Yes, I was just unmuting. And actually, it's more of just a follow-through of the importance of getting those facilities opened, recognizing that June 19th is that deadline, but the opportunity for our communities to be able to utilize those fields is going to be very important. So the sooner we can get that done in alignment with what's provided is beneficial.
Okay, seeing no other comments or questions, I'm going to move us to the second part of our summer update, which would be the academic side of things. And Mike Van Orden and others are going to provide us with an update on that. Typically, again, we would be well underway of having things laid out for summer school and for ESY and for all of those services that typically happen. And yet we have not been sure where things are going to go for availability of physical locations, as well as all of the safety measures that need to go in place. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you for that part of the update.
Thank you. And can you make me a meeting presenter?
Yes, I can. If I can find you on my list. There you are. Sorry, I thought I had you changed.
I think you're muted too, Jane. All right, there we go. Okay, it looks like everyone can see that okay. So before I start tonight, I wanted to acknowledge a few folks among many working on our summer programs, and as Dr. Stavum mentioned, typically we plan for summer programs right about now, and we're launching now. As she mentioned, this year is more complex than ever in that we are planning for delivering instruction in a more remote setting, making sure students have devices, thinking about how do we identify students, many of whom we're having a hard time reaching. And so that just adds a layer of complexity to the work. And so Kelly Pease and Becky Cattermas and Shannon Hitch have all been working long hours to make summer school work, but again, make it work in this very different reality that we're in right now. In addition, all three of those folks who I just mentioned are also planning for next year's schooling. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty significant amount of work that's going into planning for lots of different scenarios next year. So just the timing of summer school is as close as we can get it to our normal times, taking into account that we're delivering it in a different setting and that people are doing lots of work right now. So this evening, we're going to talk about 4 different summer programs or types of programs that we're offering. As you can imagine, we have a number of students that we're very concerned about in terms of loss of learning who are in maybe higher risk categories. And so we're going to start by talking about invitation programs for elementary and secondary. We also have our WANIC program, and we'll be offering some college and career technical education courses for students on a fee basis. We are offering some core academic programs and some options for families to allow them to access, in a limited way, a number of programs that we have typically in summer. And then I've invited Dr. Hitch to join us tonight to talk a little bit more depth about summer programs and extended school year, partly in response to questions that we've had from families and to acknowledge that many of our families are going to need some specific services, and so she's going to talk in more detail about those tonight. So as we think about the way we deliver summer school, and as I was mentioning at the beginning, it's going to be different than we normally offer. Normally we have schools that we are identifying around the district. We're plugging people into those schools. We're arranging for administrators to be there. We are really looking at the vast majority of our summer school this year being offered remotely. At the same time, we are looking at a number of different ways. We see a large chunk of our summer school will be offered remotely, but it will be in real time with a live teacher. So live sessions with smaller groups of kids. We've already identified, I think, over 100 teachers who are willing to help with summer school this year. And so again, they would have a schedule. They'd be on Monday through Thursday each week and actually delivering live instruction. And again, that should work for a significant number of our students and teachers. At the same time, we also know that we'll have some students that will still be challenged with getting those schedules to line up with when a teacher is available. And so for that, our teachers will also be developing pre-recorded lessons that students and families can watch on schedules that work for them. Because as you know, our families are all in very different places. They also have the ability to access both, depending on their need, but we're just recognizing that people are still in very different places, even this far into the closures that we're facing. Finally, we'll be putting out print materials for families that need access to those, and again, they can take advantage of combinations of these or a single module or a single mode that meets their needs in the best ways. We also know that there may be some very limited number of cases where in-person could be considered for students with disabilities, and so Dr. Hitch will talk about that later this evening as well. Most of our programs are going to run from July 6th through the 31st, and they, as in the past, have run Mondays through Thursdays. That gives families a little bit more time on the weekends, gives teachers some time to prepare as well. It just acknowledges that summer is a time where people are in a different mindset and a mind space, and also knowing that teaching remotely is different, more difficult. Finally, we will be making sure that students will continue to have access to their devices who are participating in summer school. So for example, EL safety net students who are participating will have devices, but we're also making sure that EL students and safety net students have devices in general. Other students who are participating in summer school also get access to devices. And then the idea is that we have to check those back in to re-provision them and kind of make sure they're working for the following year. So at the end of the summer, schools will be collecting back devices so that they can be updated. So as I mentioned, there are a number of different kinds of programs, and these in many ways mirror the typical summer programs we offer when things are normal. So one is an elementary summer literacy academy. Again, that's targeted and focused on students in grades K-3 who were below reading level when we closed. And so there'll be 600 invitations. I believe those have already been sent out to provide, again, primarily on-time, real-time instruction for students in reading and literacy. So there'll be a live teacher on a camera with a group of students, probably smaller groups of students. We're thinking about 6 to 7 students, and those students will have instruction 4 days a week. And then again, as I mentioned, there's also the option there of recorded and print materials. In addition, our title programs will be offering summer skills development for reading, writing, and math. There we have 160 students. And then our English learners, long-term, particularly students who are taking more time to acquire English language skills. We have students that we've been identifying there as well to provide summer options. So we're reaching out to families, getting them signed up for those courses, getting them in, and just to be transparent, in typical years when we do invitation programs, we get some fraction or some percentage. And so we're really keeping an eye on that, but doing a lot more direct contact with families if we don't hear from them as well. So that's work that we're continuing to do. Again, because we want to make sure that our kids get what they need, but also there's just lots of details and logistics to work out, including making sure students have devices. In addition, at the secondary level, we are working on an invitation competency-based credit recovery model for students who have incompletes, so they weren't able to maybe participate in school, or they had a low grade, maybe an F at the time of closure, and just either weren't able to participate or bring that grade up to a passing grade. And so we're looking at some competency-based credit recovery options for them. Competency-based learning, as you know, is a way for students to demonstrate that they understand an essential set of skills without having to do the full 150 hours of instruction. So once they've demonstrated that competency, we're acknowledging that they've met the requirements for the course. That program is being offered using an online provider that we have been using for a number of years successfully for credit recovery called Fuel Education. So that's one where curriculum is developed and there's a teacher that's assigned to it who will be working directly with students. And so we're looking at those options for students primarily in the core academic areas, and this week we're working with counselors and principals to start developing processes for how do we identify those students, because it's really based on students who haven't received credit, and we don't put grades in until June 19th, and we want to identify students earlier than that. So making sure students have enough time to earn credit if they still can, and then still making sure that we are identifying students early enough to get them enrolled. Similarly, we're having a specific program for English learners who are behind in credit as well. And again, there'll be an opportunity for them to get very specialized instruction to recover credit. So in both cases, our students are staying on track for graduation. So as I mentioned, we're still in the process of identifying those students. We're pulling grade reports, reports of their grades at the time of school closure, and pulling lists from each individual school so that we can directly send information to those families, inviting them to these programs. And then our schools will follow up and serve as a resource to answer questions. We also, for all of these programs I mentioned, will have both online enrollment options as well as being able to call or mail-in options. I mentioned the Wanik Skills Center, and again, typically in years we have summer offerings through Wanik for CTE courses, and so this year we will be offering some courses kind of targeted where we see some specific needs, and in courses where we know we can offer a good, solid remote experience. So those will include health careers and exploration, and fire and EMS. And so again, that'll allow some students who, one, maybe didn't get access to them this year, or we're hoping to have those be part of a larger program, gets them a little bit further ahead. So we're still working on getting those courses kind of finalized. We're also, as you know, working with many districts through the Wanik program, so we want to make sure just all of the courses that are offered for all the school districts are all lined up, and that we have teachers identified and the enrollment process identified. So it's a little more complex with Wanik just because it's a collaborative approach. I also mentioned we have what we call core academics. So these are the kind of things like reading, math, science, social studies. Our focus for the summer for our core academic areas will be primarily in reading and math. So we were able to work with our vendors for 3 of our programs that are seeming to be the most successful in use out in our schools or in our homes right now. Those include Lexia, which is a reading program for students, Dreambox Math, which is a math program. Both of those are K-5. And then Alex, which is a program, as you may recall, we adopted with our middle school math adoption a few years back, that's available for grades 6 through 8. So again, by working with the vendors, we were able to extend the availability of those programs. They typically shut off in June, and then they come back on in fall, and we aren't charged for them during that time. If we use them in the summer, in typical years, we're charged an extra cost. We were able to work with the vendors to keep those running through July 31st. So we'll have more information about that, but as I mentioned, most families are in grades K-5 using those programs, and then 6-8 for Alex. Then we also are looking at 2 math courses for families that want to have their students accelerate in the math pathways. So these are more traditionally what we offer in normal years in person. This time we're offering them remote. So what we're offering is Algebra 1 for students who are entering grades 9 through 12. So that would be our current 8th through 11th graders. So they could take a full semester or a full year's worth of algebra or geometry, which would allow them to advance to the next course when they start in the fall. So again, we're working with our online education provider, Fuel Education, to provide courses that have established curriculum that we've vetted, has a teacher assigned to them. Students can take those courses. And so, for example, if they take an algebra course, then they can enroll in geometry for the following semester, starting in the fall. Or if they take geometry, they can enroll in algebra 2. And that allows them to access more advanced courses before they graduate. Those are our typical fee-based programs. So for $405 per semester or $810, students can earn a full credit that can be applied towards graduation and moving them forward or accelerating them. So we're going to have information about that posted tomorrow on our website, and then online registration will be available from June 3rd through the 26th. And then finally, we're going to talk about special education and spend a little bit more time on this tonight. Again, because we know there's high interest in this, but also know there's a lot of work behind the scenes that's happening directly with families. So our special education folks are reaching out and we'll be connecting with families. So Dr. Hitch is going to walk us through these, and then just tell me when you want me to move to the next slide, and I'll click it for you.
Mike, it looks like Siri had a question. Do you want me to wait for her or go now?
Let's go.
We can. All I see is the screen, so I just need someone to point it out to me.
Yeah, me too.
I was hopeful that we could just take a second, if it'd be fine, to be able to just ask if there's any questions on what you just presented before we move through to special education.
Yep, that would be fine.
Okay. So the question I have is, so in regards to the technology, you mentioned having access to, in like the core academics, Alexia, Dreambox, and Alex. My question would be, are students having to return their devices by June 19th? And if so, how will they have access to being able to do that if they don't have a device?
So as I mentioned, the invitation only, we are actually putting a name to each one of those students, and then that student gets to keep their device. So they're not resubmitting it. As well as we have our students for EL and Safety Net. So we have the names of all of those students. They will also keep their devices. Then if a student needs one that's not part of those programs, they would contact us, and we're capturing names so that we can make sure a student keeps their device, and we have a record of who has which. If you're not in the summer program, then you return your device before the end of the school year. What I also mentioned, though, is all those students who have the devices over summer, we need to get our hands on them to update them, make sure they have the latest software on them, make sure they're updated to work well on our network. So we'll collect those back at the end of the summer session, re-update them, and then those will be rolled back out in the fall.
So I guess my concern is a student who isn't planning a summer program, but they don't have a device at home or have access. Would they have access to one of these devices if they needed to be able to access these core academics during the summer as well?
So for students in algebra and geometry, what we're planning on doing is a survey to say, do you need a device to be able to access? For Lexia, because we have 15,000 students approximately in elementary and another 7,000 in middle, we just don't have the capability to make sure every kid has a device. We're assuming most have devices at home. And so again, we are planning on doing a survey just to see if there's interest and how many students would request one if they needed one and wanted to use these programs. And then we're going to see if we have the capacity and capability to provide them. You know, if it's a smaller number, we think we may be able to, but if it's a larger number, we just have to look at our capability to provide devices for students next year as being kind of a high level priority as well. So we're gathering some information about that, long story short, to see how much capacity we do have and what the need is.
Because that's an important step, as we speak to equity and the capacity to be able to access it for families who don't have that, but the summer learning. The other question would be, if the summer learning is through invitation only, for the most part, if I'm a parent of a child who's not invited, is there somebody I could say, no, I really think this would be beneficial for my child, and I'd be able to contact somebody?
So we do have information about, we have contact for each of the categories, but I also need to say this, and this is nationally and internationally, we know that there was a difference in learning now compared to prior years. And so really it's on us to make sure that when we return, there are plans to recapture lost learning for every single student. And so that will be things like reviewing and reinforcing concepts in every course from either courses that were taught prior in a sequence or grade levels that were taught prior. So that will be in place. We'll also have a way to assess where students are all starting and which students are behind in grade level so that we can target interventions. So I think we're going to be in a better place to provide those kinds of supports to students next year than we are in summer, just given our capacity, because we also have to think, we have to hire teachers to deliver all these courses. We have to make sure that students have a device. We need to make sure that there's some quality there, and we don't have the ability to do that on a large scale for 30,000 students. We do have a capacity to do it on a smaller scale, and when we're thinking the larger scale, we really are thinking about re-entry and reopening schools with some very different ways of starting the school year.
Okay, thank you. I see there's two other hands that are up.
Cassandra, I believe, was first.
Thank you. This probably segues into special education, but the same question for IXL and News to You. Special education transition room students have been using that during this closure. It's the thing that keeps us on any kind of a schedule. He knows we have to do these two things, if nothing else, and it would be a great benefit to be able to continue doing that over the summer.
And I think Dr. Hitch will be able to speak to that.
Mark?
Yes, Mike, in addition to being able to have access to their the devices that you mentioned, will the hotspots still be up and running for the summer?
Yeah, that's part of the conversation too. And again, trying to target it and keep it focused on where we know students are. So Kelly Pease and Becky and Sally Askman are working on identifying that. So again, that's one of those challenges of not only are we providing summer school, but we're providing infrastructure that's being pushed out into the community. So it's, as you can imagine, quite a bit of planning that's going into that.
The other thing I would just say is...
That's what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
The other thing that I would say is this summer, we're still, in a bit of a tenuous circumstance. I think we also have to look out to next summer. And, many districts are talking about this in terms of a series of years as we bring kids back up to grade level and look at interventions, that it's not a, single shot kind of a viewpoint about how we get students back up to where they may have been or where we would want them to be. Siri, you had your hand up again?
I did, I'm sorry. I just have one other question. As I appreciate the multimodal concepts that you're putting out in regards to how the online learning will be done. I still, as I look through some of that, think about that as our economy opens and people go back to work and parents, many of these still require, even if a teacher is there, that often there is an adult or somebody who is able to work with the kids, depending on age, of course. It will be very dependent. So has there any consideration of doing small group within this where you have 5 kids in live within the new settings? And so I guess that's the pieces I'm still a little concerned when you start to add our context of our community once everything opens.
Yeah, I think it's like Dr. Staben was mentioning at the beginning, there's still so many unknowns. What we know we can deliver for sure is remote instruction. We can guarantee it, we can get it up and running, and we can make it work. And as you're mentioning, there will be some cases where that may be more challenging. It's also challenging sometimes for parents to get their kids to a school setting and then pick them up during the middle of the day as well. So, there's trade-offs for either. If for some reason we hear from Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, open up all schools in July, I don't want to entirely close the door to it, but at the same time, as I was sharing at the beginning, we have to plan, and there's just so much work that goes into planning that if we say, okay, we're going to have both options available, that just doubles the amount of effort and work that has to go in as we're planning for next year as well. So if we were to say, okay, we've got a remote model set up, we're also going to build side by side with that a model where we have schools that are identified, custodial services that are identified, transportation that's identified, teachers who are going to report there, but we don't know if we're going to even be able to open those schools. That's planning time that we're not able to apply to getting ready for next year. So like I said, I don't want to leave the door entirely closed. We have talked about it, and we're keeping it as a possibility, but it just adds so many layers of complexity to be able to deliver programs with fidelity over the course of a relatively short time in a very big district with buildings that are likely going to need to be prepped, with transportation services that are hampered right now, with people who are in high risk groups who may not be able to deliver services to kids. It's like planning for, again, an exponentially greater amount of efforts to get something to work as we're planning for next year. So that was kind of the rationale for why not having some in person as well. Again, though, if we hear something in the next week or two that we can do something different, we have said we will keep the door open to that.
I guess you can also, I appreciate absolutely all the difficulties is the option of piloting what happens in which to do that and being able to learn from it, similar to the online that's gone this time, and being able to incorporate those things in. So I see it as having some options around it as well from a positive aspect. So I totally get the logistics and the challenge behind it and being able to handle two different, strikingly different ways of delivering an education. So thank you.
Okay, shall we segue into special ed?
All right. Good evening, everybody. I thought it might be helpful if we began the conversation around extended school year for special education by just grounding ourselves in an understanding of what extended school year is and the purpose that it's meant to serve. Extended school year is about extending just that, the school year, in order to support a child in special education. It's done in accordance to their IEP, and it's provided at no cost. Those services that are provided during ESY have to be determined by an IEP team. So they are individually decided upon with each student. And really the purpose of ESY is to maintain student learning. It's not to teach new things or to gain new knowledge, but instead it is to maintain skills. So for example, if a child is home during winter break and they return back to school in January, and it takes them nearly the entire month of January to come back to where they were prior to winter break, that would be a child where we would have data to suggest they'd be eligible for ESY services. So truly the team determines the ESY service need at the annual IEP meeting, and they make that decision based upon data, and they're looking at regression and recoupment of skills for students, as well as whether or not a child's at a critical learning stage. So all that being said, if we take it to the next slide, our ESY program this year is going to run in alignment with the general education summer school program. I think one thing that's important to know is that no matter if a child is in special education or general education, they can access the district's summer school program. So for example, the literacy program for children K-3, that doesn't matter if a child's in general ed or special ed, they can access that service if they qualify for it. So I want to make sure people understand that foundation in the summer school program for all kids truly means all kids. But specifically, ESY for special education will run during the same time that summer school runs. We currently have 22 early childhood and elementary students and 17 secondary students who are both eligible and signed up to participate. So this year was certainly an anomaly, and this was a year in which we had a handful of families that are declining ESY services, and it's primarily because of it being virtual in nature and or their family has other plans for the summer. So those are the numbers of students that we're going to be working with. We're excited that we have a fair number of staff that are willing to provide instruction, including both paraeducators and teachers. We've yet to determine if we can access speech therapists and occupational therapists from our staff. Those are typically the harder positions for us to fill, so we're working on that. We're currently in process of determining which of those 39 children may be unable to access a virtual ESY program. So we're going through and we're contacting each and every family that has a child that qualifies for ESY. We're determining first and foremost, did they want to participate? And then secondly, how have they been doing this spring with virtual learning? And having that conversation with that family as to whether or not a virtual ESY program would be appropriate for them. We are looking at the potential for in-person services for kids that are currently unable to access the virtual learning out of those 39 children. However, of course, it's completely dependent upon the state allowances and as well the availability of staff. So right now, OSPI guidance says no children in schools with only a small few exceptions. And until that guidance changes, we're not able to look at a more significant number of students receiving in-person services. And you can also understand the complications because a lot of our students are students that require much more hands-on support. They may require changing or other kinds of feeding supports. They also may be students that struggle to wear masks or find that to be a challenge to have others around them in masks. So some of those considerations are things we have to look at as we look towards whether or not we can provide in-person services safely for both the students and the adults. Okay. So our kids in special education who are in ESY services and or in the district summer school programs, they'll continue to have access to technology. They'll continue to have access to their laptops. For the kids who are currently receiving in-person instruction, we have a very small number of children. I think I've shared with you previously that for extraordinary needs and behaviors we're serving in person. We're going to continue those services through the summer, as well as for students that are currently in NPA placements or private school placements. We'll continue to support them in their programs this summer as they're offered by those NPAs. And then finally, of course, our students will be able to access and participate in the Gen Ed programming. And what I think is one of the most crucial factors as to whether or not our children will find success in this process is that we intend to offer ESY in real time. So it won't be pre-recorded instruction, and it will instead be direct teaching from student to teacher, from teacher to student, or from teacher to a small group of students, just depending on what they can be successful with. And that's what we'll be looking at for ESY. It looks like there's questions. Should I take the questions?
Yes, thank you. I will go ahead.
I'm trying to get my microphone on. Sorry, it's very
There we
slow.
go. I believe Cassandra and Mark Stewart. So, how about Mark?
And Mark's is probably slow too if his is lagging as much as
No,
mine is.
I'm unmuted, but I couldn't hear you. You're cutting out. I'll go ahead and ask unless Cassandra is already ready to roll.
She has not.
You're good.
She has not started. So, Director Stewart,
Okay.
you're on.
All right. The couple of questions I had was you mentioned that regarding the in-person instruction that it sounds like to me that you're awaiting a notice from OSPI. Since we know that we have these students in need, and more of them than not are ones who do need or need the special in-person instruction, are we lobbying OSPI or knocking down their doors about every other day to find out what we can do for these kids, or are we just waiting for them to come knocking on our door?
Well, I think that
I've got some follow.
And Mike can speak to this as well, but I think first and foremost, the reason that those expectations are from OSPI the way they are is because of the recommendations of the Department of Health. And so ultimately, our first priority is staff and student health and well-being and safety, and the families that those staff and students go home to and their well-being and health and safety. And so that's the reason why those restrictions are in place. And so we don't want to open up to more students until we can have a level of confidence that we are going to be able to maintain as much health and safety as possible. We have vulnerable students, we have vulnerable staff. One of the challenges that we looked at with in-person ESY services is the fact that the majority of our bus drivers are over the age of 60. And so those are kind of the considerations that we have to be thoughtful about. I think we are working in collaboration with our partners at OSPI, and I'm certainly working collaboratively with the ESD and other districts. But if you were to look into it, you'd see that nearly all districts are offering a virtual program, and it's simply because we are still at stage 1 in this state.
Mark, did you say you have a follow-up question?
Oh, yes, I did. I'm sorry. As I said, it seems like the end of the sentences are falling out, so I don't know when to jump in and when to, I'm going to be interrupting. From hearing John's presentation earlier, it sounds like the athletes are going to be able to return in mid-June, but yet we don't know that we can return our special needs students. It seems a little bit, there seems to be two different levels of being able to participate with students. And second of all, have we asked the parents whether or not the kids can use masks, or are we just, how are we determining this?
Well, I think there's a big difference between having students in a confined space interacting hand over hand or interpersonally with students and adults than it would be if kids are playing tennis outside. And so you have different considerations in that way. And in terms of the wearing of the masks, that's just an example of some of the things that we have to think about. And so it's not that we aren't pursuing in-person services because we have data that says no kids will wear masks. It's more that this is one of the considerations that we're thinking about and trying to be thoughtful about. Do we do social stories for kids to help them understand that masks are okay and that they're safe? Do we have special masks that perhaps have an opening so kids can see the person's lips who's talking? They're just all of the different factors that we're thinking of. We would like nothing better than to be in our schools and with our students. You will not find a greater group of advocates than your special educators. The challenge, of course, is that we also want to keep them and our staff safe. And so we have to balance those needs and rely upon the expertise of OSPI and the Department of Health.
Cassandra, your hand is up.
Were you done, Mark?
I guess so. Go ahead.
We're not cutting you off. I'm just waiting.
No, go ahead. If you have more to say, I'm happy to wait.
No, go ahead, Cassandra. I'm done.
All right. So we offer Algebra 1 and geometry for acceleration at a cost. Have we looked at parents who feel 6 months away from school, traditional school, is going to put their special education student at such a disadvantage that they would like to try and correct that with an opportunity that the school district is offering, even if it's costs money?
I'm sorry, Cassandra.
Actually, why don't I
rephrase that? I'm not sure I understood that.
Well, the question is, could we offer more options for any family, whether it's a student with a disability or general ed? Like I said at the beginning, I think it's partly our capacity. And again, this is comparable in many ways to what we offer in typical years. And so like I said, our approach really has to be, and I think like schools and districts around the state and the nation, the approach really has to be in the school year that we're moving into. We really have to have lots of options in credit recovery and learning recovery available for students. And I get there's an interest, I have 2 daughters myself. We want to make sure that they're staying on track. And we are planning to make sure that that happens in the fall, to try to address it all through summer when, we have to think about getting teachers is one thing. So how can you get enough teachers to make sure you can meet every student's need when many of our teachers aren't available or won't be able to teach in the summer? Similarly, we want to make sure we have programs that are developed to be really high quality in a very short window of time to earn a full credit. Well, that takes developing the curriculum. So, part of it's capacity, part of it is, again, just making sure we're really well equipped for next fall, and that's going to be the primary way most families get their needs met. And to be able to offer a whole range of lots of different courses in the summer is just something at this time, as we're looking at our capacity to be able to do in an effective way is just not there right now. So I think, like I said, I think that applies to any family, including families of students who have disabilities.
Let me back up and say that I appreciate all the work that you have done. And I know we have administrators that are incredibly busy, don't really even have time for family because you've been working so dedicatedly for all students. I'm trying to find what would help all students. And I know what it is like to have the special education student who will not have been in real time, education setting for a 6-month period of time. And so, looking at, can we let kids have access to their school laptop or device or their Wi-Fi over the summer so that they can work, on any kind of academic that the family feels they're comfortable presenting? Can we hook them up with resources? I'm not trying to say that you're not doing a great job. I'm challenging us to really expand and think outside of even what we're currently looking at, because we don't know what the next couple of years are going to look like. And I appreciate that you're looking at extending that view of school and future, not just to next year, but to farther down the road. So when I see opportunities for kids to accelerate, which my older kids, I probably would have jumped on and said, this is fantastic. I just want that same opportunity for all students. And in this case, it's not even acceleration. So if you find resources, or if you find other districts that are finding a way to make something happen over this summer period for kids whose IEPs don't say ESY on them, if parents can ask you to reopen the IEP, which I know they can, but if they choose to ask you to reopen the IEP and evaluate whether or not their student now needs ESY, I think we're just in such a different situation now that, we have to really try the best that we can to look at all opportunities and try and meet the needs of some kids who really are struggling to have any needs met, and behaviors are escalating, and things that they were doing in the school year, in the classroom, that's no longer the student that they are currently.
Yeah.
So I would challenge us to look at other options, other ways that we can keep kids from falling any further behind, all kids. And that is partly probably going to be access to that technology over the summer and some other resources.
Yeah, and I don't know if John wants to speak to it. He's a little closer to some of the work around making sure that we have devices for the summer, but also for the following school year. And I don't know, John, would you mind just giving a few words on that and kind of why the approach we're taking is the approach we're taking?
Absolutely. So the balance that we're trying to achieve is assuring that we have continuity of services for the academic year next year, as well as meeting the needs of students this summer. And so Sally has been working with both Jen and Kelly around what do we need for the population of students that we're identifying for summer school, to make sure that the programs that we're running and pushing out to students that they actually have access to those. We know that not every student in the district will say, yes, I want to keep my device for the summer. They'll turn it in and they may use a different device at home. The reason it's so important for us to touch every device before next school year is we create a new student image on an annual basis. And an image is everything from the software, the safety features, the operating system, everything is redone so that it is ready and prepared for the next school year. Because what we know is as kids keep their device over the summer, there are some that will lose connection to our network, and then and that's really the safety features that become invalid. And so they'll have to check their device in, we'll have to get them a new one. And so there is some of that work that has to occur over the summer. And so just being really particular about who has a device, making sure that it's for a need, not just because it would be nice, because we also have an obligation for our next school year, not knowing exactly what that's going to look like. And any student that's learning in a remote setting next school year, we want to make sure that day one, they have device in hand and they're able to move forward with learning from day one, knowing that that device is updated, it has a new image, it's been scrubbed, and all of the things that we do on the summer with every student device, both secondary and elementary. And we also know that there are students and families that will say, yes, we want a device, not for summer school, but because we have the access to online resources that Lake Washington provides. And the only way my student will be able to access that is if they have a district issued device. That's the other set of students we're trying to ferret out. How many of those students are in Lake Washington, and how many of them would want a device? We also know there's parents that are saying a lot of screen time over the last 4 months. My child needs a break from screen time. And so there's that population as well. And so we're taking all of that into account over these next few weeks as we're winding up the school year, asking people to bring their devices back, knowing that if a family wants to keep their device or needs to keep their device, it's just better at this point for them to be on a list where they keep their device versus checking it in, but also imploring families that if you don't need that device over the summer, it is best for everyone for you to check it in so that we can prep it and start learning next school year.
So how would parents, I know, Shannon, I think you mentioned that calls were going to families to find out what they might need over the summer. Was that just the 17 and the 29, I think, students that were going to ESY? Or is that...
So we are reaching out specifically to the students who qualified for ESY services. However, I also would say that we have a group coming together to discuss potentially what school is going to look like in the fall. That is going to include some representative families from special education as well as some students in special education. So we have their voices at the table as we plan for how we're going to move into next year.
So at this point, if a family has a concern about learning loss, they should contact their teacher?
Yes, they would talk to their special education teacher.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I would just say that I think all of us wish that we would have gotten to a point by now where we would have had things begin to be open and people feel more comfortable coming on site. And here it is June 1st, and we're a long ways from that, which is heartbreaking on a number of levels. But when I talk with teachers and with parents, there's this collective heartbreak about everybody understanding what this has meant for all of our students, but particularly for our most vulnerable kids. And there's so many different examples of, you know, the progress that kids were making and the things that were working so well, and then those just dropped out from under everybody. And so nobody wants to restore that faster than any of us, yet we're left with these weird conditions that create this situation that makes it feel so tenuous. And I will just tell you the level of planning that's already happening for the simplest of things not even the most complex of things, getting people parked in the building to a space that's been accounted for. How is it going to be cleaned? Who should and shouldn't be there? It feels like it should be a really easy thing to just say, everybody come back, let's start some services this summer, and yet it's not. And into next fall, it's still not going to be. And that's the other difficult thing, is that there's kind of this feeling of no end in sight, and people get a little desperate even thinking about what if this continues into next year, and what if it's, you know, a regression of even more than what I've seen so far. So I want to be understanding to people in that they've faced some really, really hard things, and they've watched things happen with their child in front of their eyes where they've seen the regression and they know what the remedy is, and yet we can't go after that with everything that we have to get it restored quickly. So we want that for kids too. And, you know, when we think about year-round school, we think about all of those things that we've talked about for a long time. We all feel like, why can't that be now? Why can't we just, you know, kind of keep going into the summer? Yet there are reasons why we need to have that break and that kind of upkeep to get us into next year because of the complexities. But it's really, really hard. And we feel badly about that. Mark, you still had a hand up.
Sandra, you finished? Okay.
I was just going to add that I
do.
appreciate the
We have
gaps
lags,
analysis. No, I appreciate the gaps analysis that we receive as directors, so that we can see what areas really need some additional supports. And I appreciate that. And I just encourage us to keep thinking creatively outside that box and color outside those lines.
I just want to echo Cassandra's points earlier. I know that folks are working hard on this. I'm not saying we're not. It's just a matter of sometimes looking outside the box, as she was saying. Sometimes it's the idea of just approaching it from a different standpoint. The parents out there are at wit's end in many respects. As Jane said, seeing their children regress. And I would be interested to find out if we could find out the age, the number of our teachers or paras and bus drivers who are either physically or their health is at risk to the point they can't be in contact, or they are of the age that they shouldn't be. That to me would help dictate whether or not we could have available bus drivers. If we can't, we can't. But if we're not even looking at their ages and just saying, oh, yeah, we've had too many of them. Well, let's look. It's worth doing our homework to make sure that we have these services available. Also, will the summer programs also be used to make up for missed services that were missed during the school year?
So extended school year is very different than something along the lines of compensatory services. So extended school year is about helping students that show significant regression and recoupment in a normal school experience. All of our kids to some degree are experiencing regression challenges right now. But for our kids in special ed that qualify for ESY, it's if it is something that happens in a typical year experience for them. Compensatory services is sometimes what we consider and look at once we have a student who hasn't had access to special education for a period of time. And I think that's something that districts are looking at. I know they're looking at that from legal aspects, they're looking at it from legislative aspects. And that is something that we will determine once students return, because it's not until we can actually measure where they're at and compare and contrast to where they were that we can truly say whether or not we think any type of additional support or service might be needed. It's a complex issue. Do you provide additional supports for students during the school day, and as a result you are spending more time in special education? Do you look at providing additional supports outside the school day and what would be involved in that? there's a lot of complexity to it that we're looking at right now.
Well, I understand, and I just hate to think of the parents that are waiting until September or October to find out whether or not they should have services compensated for that were from this last spring. I think they would find that rather disconcerting, and I would be I could imagine they'd be shopping for lawyers before they'd be shopping for consultants.
Well, there's also the recognition that, you know, and there was actually a really well-written blog post on COPPA's website, which is a website that supports family advocates and attorneys, that recognize the fact that this is a pandemic. It's an incredibly, once in a lifetime, hopefully, novel experience. And so compensatory has a tone to it that somehow a district did something wrong, when in reality, we are all victims of circumstances here. And so we want to help our kids make as much growth and progress as we possibly can. And we are trying to think outside the box and creatively in ways that we can do that.
I'm just going to interject too. I know we've had this discussion before. We are looking at the statistical side of this, and we have many staff members who may fall into high-risk categories of one kind or another, or the age guidelines, which now are, I believe, 65 and older. I will tell you, it's a significant part of our workforce, and so that also is part of the extensive planning that has to happen, so that if we are going to have someone who is driving a bus or is in an office or is in the classroom, that we've also thought about the other safeguards that have to go with that, so they are able to perform their work again in the way that they were before. You know, I told some of you, I went to a medical appointment last week, and it was an office that had been closed for quite a while, and they lost all of their staff except for one person for a variety of reasons. We want all of our staff to stay with us, but to do that, we have to ensure that we have safe working conditions, and then that we can run programs. But it's going to be a difficult thing putting all of those pieces in place, as it is for school districts across the nation. Siri, your hand is up.
I do, thank you. Just a quick, so the extended school year is really just a component already built into people's IEPs, if I'm understanding correctly as to how it was explained, correct? Okay.
Correct.
And is this the typical number that we have every summer, the 39?
It is. It's fairly typical, although we know that we're losing students this year because their families, I think, are exhausted and are not interested in engaging in ESY services.
And so it's one of these things as I sort of look, I think the underlying value that's coming through is really wanting to ensure that some of our more at-risk students, or students who have potentially greater needs that were not met during the school year, especially because of the pandemic and what has occurred, are there things we can do this summer in which to at least shore up those pieces and address some of those other challenges? And I think special education, I think students there, that's a big component of that. And so I think sometimes we can get caught up in the legal piece of it. So I understand the compensatory is very much a legal component to it. I'm kind of trying to think of the heart piece to it, which I know we all have. And so as we provide support for our Title I, for our low income, for our EL, are there things that special education could be doing in a more general sense above and beyond ESY, I guess? That's sort of a mandate. And I don't have an answer to it. I'm just knowing that because you've had such a challenging environment that we're in right now, what is the heart piece we can provide in providing connection and bringing things forward for families in that sense? So that's just my thought as I go. I don't have an answer. And I know you're doing a ton, but I'm just trying to think of, I think that's the underlying piece that you're hearing is that value piece behind it. I think with technology, the piece that's coming through is we're recognizing that many of our families have access, but there are some that don't. And some of those fall into certain categories, and that could be changing now because we have had huge economic impacts at this point in time. There has been job loss. There has been amount of food requirements that are needed. So the more from a technology side, we can ensure, much as John was saying, of who needs one to be able to access, even if they're not in our programs. I think that's an extra piece that we're adding. And so that's, I guess, the same thing I think for special ed. Is there that extra piece that we can try and do? So I just sort of tossed that out, not really with an answer, just sort of a question. I'm not really expecting an answer necessarily, so.
There's all of that. There's the conundrum of where does the school year end as it typically would, and given the circumstances that we've had, what are the pieces that can have some overlap from this year into next year or across the summer? So I think we've heard that, and we feel that as well. We still have some of the same constraints that we normally have with funding and staffing and programming, while also, trying to put things in place for next year, just as we already would be. But it's that kind of blurring of the lines that's happened this year of, things that we wouldn't have normally done, we've done, and where do those things start and end as we go into the summer and then into next year. So we'll continue to look at all of those pieces for things that we need to factor in for planning.
Could I just add another kind of wrap up? I really appreciate the acknowledgement and recognition that people are working really hard, but I also don't want to give the impression that we're just saying, well, these are all these challenges and we're working so hard we either can't solve those problems or we just don't have the time or capacity. And I don't think that's actually accurate. I think what we're trying to do is recognize the challenges that are legitimate and what are the trade-offs in some cases that are associated with them. So we talked a little bit about that tonight in terms of devices. So we could make sure more kids have devices, but the trade-off might be when we have to be in a remote setting, which we're very likely to be next year, and we don't have devices at that time, is that worth the trade-off, particularly if we're going to really put an effort into recapturing lost learning when we come back to school? So that's a legitimate trade-off that we have to analyze and make a decision about. And it's not that we think it's too hard of a problem, it's just a cost-benefit analysis. Similarly, as we were talking about making sure that our staff are safe and that our students are safe, that's a legitimate, real issue that we have to work through. And sometimes the costs of bringing people back are not worth the risks to their health. And so I've had different conversations with folks that acknowledge people are working hard and there are challenges and you should be looking at alternatives. And I want to be really clear, we're looking at this from every angle and every way we can and trying to do the most good with the resources we have in the most creative ways, and really also plan very intentionally for how do we think about this over the long term, because we know we're in for this for at least a year, maybe two, and even after that we're going to have to be doing things to recapture learning, readjust the way we deliver instruction. So I really, like I said, I do appreciate the acknowledgement, and I also want to be really clear, it's not we're throwing up our hands and saying we can't do anything for these problems, but we're trying to be really intentional and thoughtful. And as Dr. Stavum mentioned, we can't acknowledge enough how hard this is for families, and particularly for families with students who have kids with disabilities, speak English as a second language, have two essential workers at home, whose kids are working at home. Many of our staff are in those same situations. And so we acknowledge that fully, and we have to be really thoughtful and intentional about how we address problems and exploring the trade-offs for those if we're going to do this right over the long haul. And I know there's an interest in being really quick and doing things very rapidly, but sometimes the costs of that are so significant down the road that we may want to think differently. And so I just wanted to put that out there, like I said, because I know we have good people working in this in very creative ways to come up with solutions to really address the needs of our students and families over the long haul.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay.
If I may just say one thing, we had a public comment tonight about Denmark. My son was in Copenhagen. He actually had to return from Denmark because of the pandemic. And so we're still in contact with the family there who had 4 young children from 11 below. So it has been interesting to hear their experience as Denmark has reopened. I did actually forward, they have some great children's videos, animated, telling them what fall looked like or what their coming back to school experience was going to be as talking to kids. So I think those are some key things I'm sure you're looking at everything around the world, but I just wanted, as that was a public comment also mentioned, there are some very fascinating things that are going on in regards to that, and what is happening. So just wanted to put that up.
Great, thank you. We'll be looking at every and all examples as we try to figure this out on many, many levels. So we appreciate all of those resources. Okay, with that, I'm going to take the liberty of moving us on to results 1. And Dr. Holman is going to be presenting that monitoring report tonight. One thing is, we noted when we sent that out, this would typically come after R2 and R3 have both been presented. But we're doing it now just to make sure that we had all of these kind of buttoned up here over the next couple of weeks. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Holman.
Okay, I will assume that you can see my screen. Is that correct? Great. Okay,
yes.
Thank you. So this is results 1, and I was just reflecting, I believe this is my 6th time presenting this to the board, and so it's exciting to continue to see the progress, even though we've slightly changed the indicators over time. The primary indicator that we've been looking at has been our graduation rate, and it's exciting to continue to see that ongoing progress with that. And so when we think about results 1, it is titled The Mission of Lake Washington School District, and we know that our mission is about graduating each and every student prepared to lead a rewarding, responsible life as a contributing member of our community and greater society. So when you think about a mission, it's our fundamental purpose as an organization, and the board has charged our organization with ensuring that the systems, the practices, the programs, our strategic efforts are all in alignment with assuring that students are graduating with this. And then our vision of every student being future ready, prepared for college, the global workplace, and personal success is really that aspiration of ensuring that we're preparing our students for their futures. And just a couple bullet points about results 1 before we get into the data. Achievement in results 1, indicators continue to remain high for the all students category. We've continued to see that over time, but we also know that there are specific student groups that continue to experience less success than their peers, and we'll dig into a little bit of that. There are also some places within the indicators that I think we also want to highlight that are successes, because they're demonstrating progress for some of those student groups. And so overall, we're reporting that reasonable progress has been made with noted exceptions. And so, as a reminder, the board updated the indicators for results 1 this year. And so our typical on-time graduation rate, and then that third one down, the extended graduation rate. If you recall, we previously were reporting a 5-year graduation rate, and just over the last couple of years, the board had actually extended that out to 7 years, because we know from our high school students that we have some students that after their 4 years, we already say, we don't want you to graduate right now because there's additional services. Those are our transition services for our students, some of our students on IEPs. And so really looking at a 7-year graduation rate captures each and every one of our students. And you can see that the 7-year graduation rate and the students not dropping out of high school, the indicator is that same number, because what that essentially is saying is we want to make sure that every student has a chance to graduate. And if we had the indicator for dropout higher or lower than the 7-year graduation rate, that wouldn't make sense. And so then you can see the other indicators there. The next couple are similar to what we've reported in the past. The indicator of 9th graders earning credit for all courses attempted, that's a slight change in how we've reported it in the past. We used to report out 9th graders earning a set of credits versus all courses attempted. And so that data is interesting to look at and actually tells a bit of a different story. And so that's important. And then for all of our 10th grade students, we actually have them take the PSAT. And so we're incorporating that into results 1 as well. And so looking at our overall graduation rate, so percent of students graduating within 4 years, and that's a cohort model. So if you start ninth grade, you are in the cohort that within 4 years you technically, quote unquote, should be graduated to be participating in the on-time graduation rate. For our all-student group, 93.1% of students graduated. You can see our 4-year trend is in the positive. And like we've talked before, when you start getting into areas of 93%, 94%, continuing to move that needle will continue to be difficult. And but that's the work that we do, and that's the work we focus on. There's a couple of, there's a couple of student groups that I just want to point out that when I saw this caused concern for our English language learners, our students from low-income households, and our students receiving special education services. I just talked a little bit about why our students receiving special education services may not be graduating within 4 years, but we also don't want to see a decline in that on-time graduation rate. So something we'll need to do is make sure that the students in those groups were targeted to need additional services, because we also don't want to see a decrease for those students. For our English language learners and our students from low income households, you can see there's also a decline over the last 4 years. Something for us to take a look at. I also want to point out that two of our racial groups, our Black African American and Hispanic Latino groups, both have a positive 4-year trend. It's important for us to continue to look at all of these factors across the board, both race, program, and situation. And so then when looking at percent of students not dropping out of high school, remember that indicator was greater than 98%. And you can see a lot of yellow here. And if you remember, yellow indicates within 10 percentage points of the indicator, with one group showing red there for not dropping out of high school, and that's our English language learners, and our students that are Asian, very, very low dropout rate. And so overall, this paints a good picture. You can see that our Black African American students have demonstrated a positive 4-year trend, which is important in what we want to see. Okay, so for our students, our extended graduation rate, graduating within 7 years, you can see again, overall, this is a really positive picture with a number of our racial groups showing positive 3-year trends. And why is it a 3-year trend? Because that is the first reporting period was 3 years ago. And so we've just had that for a period of time. Next year, the board will see a 4-year trend. And so it's important for us to continue paying attention to that. Two groups I just want to point out again: students participating in our English language learner program and students from low-income households, both with a negative trend, also both with indicator percentages below 10% from the indicator. So again, these are just areas that we continue to focus on, and we'll talk a little bit at the end about, how do you address these areas for specific student groups. Also want to point out that for our students receiving special education services, that they have a graduation rate within the 90s, which I think is extremely positive. And you can see their 3-year trend continues on a positive trajectory as well. So when looking at results 1, it's about graduating students and graduating them future ready. And so this indicator looks at the percent of students enrolling in a post-secondary institution within 2 years, and a post-secondary institution is a 2 or 4 year public or private school. That's the operational definition there. And you can see overall, we have high participation in post-secondary institutions. One that I just want to point out is our students from low-income households. One of the lower student groups that are accessing post-secondary with also a negative 4-year trend. One of the things this caused me to wonder is for our students as they go through middle school, accessing the tuition support that they can access after high school for college or university. How is that program supporting our students? Are they accessing it? Are they using those resources? Because as our students graduate from our system, they do have that opportunity to go to college or university. Also want to point out something that was of interest. So while some of our other indicators look at our English language learners and maybe some of the challenges for our students that are English language learners that are graduates, you can see for those students high enrollment rate in college or university with a significant positive 4-year trend. And so this is one of the other indicators that changed slightly. We used to look at percent of students participating in dual credit courses with a B or higher. Now it's percent of graduates completing. And so that's a good way to look at holistically over a student's entire 4-year experience in high school. During that time, did they participate and complete a dual credit course with a B or higher? And so that's really kind of what this looks at. And so you can see here again, many students are accessing. I don't believe there's a student group below 80%, with many of our student groups that are having positive trends. You can see here 3 groups that we're just going to want to pay attention to, either because they have a negative 4-year trend or because the percent of students in that group aren't accessing our dual credit courses to the level that we want them to. And why is this important? Because we know that students that are successful in a dual credit course, that is one of those predictors for success in post-secondary. And so we want to pay attention to that. Next indicator is looking at 9th graders earning credit for all courses attempted. And so this is an important indicator because when you think about starting high school and starting high school well, having a course failure is a difficult situation to rebound from. And I believe we see the data play out because the student groups that aren't graduating at the same level as their peers, the students that aren't accessing college at the same rate as their peers, is similar to students that aren't earning full credit for all courses attempted. And so this is just an area for us to pay attention to because there's some data here that is of great concern. And so one thing I want to point out over to the right, you can see our benchmark district ranking. It's really across the board. Some of our student groups ranking second among our benchmarking districts, all the way down to our students from low-income household ranking 9th in this category. So that's a bit concerning. And so overall, again, this is one of those indicators that historically we looked at a little bit differently. And to me, this actually paints a more accurate picture and gives us better data to be able to take action on. And these last 2 indicators are indicators that we haven't used as part of results 1 in this form or fashion before. And so you can see here again that across the board at the all student group category, that many of our students are meeting the benchmark for reading and writing. And this is the College and Career Readiness benchmark of the PSAT. But there are a number of student groups that aren't having the same success as their peers. And so, these are data that we're going to want to continue to look at, continue to analyze, continue to disaggregate, because, when I see student groups success in the 40s and the 50s, our English language learners in both reading, writing, and you'll see in math, very, very low readiness rates on the PSAT, meaning that the skills commensurate with being successful in post-secondary have not been attained at this point. And so, again, if we are preparing students to be future ready, this is one of those indicators for us to take a look at. And very, very similar outcomes for mathematics on the college and career readiness benchmarks of the PSAT. It's important to note that results 1 is really the outcome of all of the strategic work that we reference and report on in results 2 and 3. And so when you think about really an overall assessment of everything we do, results 2 and 3 provide how we're doing in those areas, but also they provide the what, the strategic efforts, the efforts to connect with students, academics, interpersonally, and really that all feeds up to results 1, because everything we do as a district is all about achieving our mission and vision for students. With that, I will take questions. Jane, I'll let you call on people. I'll leave the presentation up in case board members want to reference any data.
Thanks. I don't see any hands up yet. Okay. There we go. Cassandra.
Oh, I just wanted to point out for the district's benefit that the board is very closely following all of these trends and percentages and are very well versed. And so that's probably why we don't have a question tonight. We've asked you a lot of questions over time.
That's a good point. Eric, your hand is up.
Yeah, in the past, we've seen data for graduates from our ELL program. And I recall, I think even last year we saw that, and the data was that they were graduating from high school at roughly the same rate as students who had never been in our ELL program. Why is that not in? I didn't see that in the report this year. Why did we ask you to remove it, or why is it not in there?
So that wasn't part of the indicators, and that was for students that had previously been participated in our EL program. Students that are reported as English language learners in these data are actively participating in that program at time of graduation. And so we can follow up with those data if that's of interest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's something for the board to talk about. If we didn't make it part of the indicators for this year, then it shouldn't be reported out. So when we discuss this for next year, I do. To me, that is the more interesting data point of whether our program is successful. And it's still helpful to know. At any rate, I guess this is something I just like to talk about with the rest of the board when we talk about what we're going to be interested in for next year.
Absolutely.
The other piece of that is within R2, thinking about the indicators there that show you the data along the way before it gets to a graduation point, if that's something that you want to continue to monitor. Chris?
Yeah, I actually don't have any data questions. I just have it may be me being discombobulated this evening, but the presentation wasn't in the current board folder, and I usually like to flip back and forth to understand the slides. So if it was intended to be there, it would be nice to put it there. If it wasn't intended to be there, I'd like to know where it is. But thank you for the presentation.
It should be there. I also had sent it to board members, so we'll want to make sure that you have those for future ones. Yep. We'll check on the portal. Yep. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Dr. Holman.
No, actually, sorry, I couldn't hit the buttons fast enough, this whole
There's a lag
different
tonight.
things we have to do. So thank you very much. It's always great to be able to see sort of the big picture of what's going on and those big components with the additional indicators. I do think there's some additional questions the board will need to work on as to how does the benchmarking work. And so as you look through this and you were saying that you saw the benchmarking different within those districts, what is that telling you of which you need that could be beneficial from that? I know I look at it and think, what are those districts? Why are we down here? Why are they? I'll admit, I liked it better when we did all 295 districts and worked off of that component a little differently. I think benchmarking can play games a little bit. So I guess I ask that question to you as you look at this data, how does this inform the work that's going to happen within the district? I look at it and say, we still got equity issues that we need to be addressing. That's very clear. I think there are those systemic pieces that we need to work on, and we've talked about that. And how do we go forward with that? So I guess I'll put that back.
Yeah, one of the things as I was preparing for this, it caused me to wonder, and a question that I'll follow with Tim is, what's the trend of that benchmarking as well? Because, there's been a number of years where for our EL population, we've, been the top of the benchmarking districts. And so just understanding, is this a 1-year thing for a group, or are we consistently benchmarking lower? And if so, there's a number of questions to ask and probably some outreach to do with other school districts, because we have districts that are similar to us, and if they have programs, practices, systems in place that we can either emulate, learn from for implementation, then that's what these data are really for.
It's also a moving target when you're benchmarking against other districts and not monitoring their placement within the benchmarking. So, I mean, it's a good way to get a big picture snapshot of where you fall in relationship to those around you, so you're not, seeing huge skewed numbers. But it's also statistically, different every year depending on where those comparatives are. So that's just another thing to think about.
I was just going to say, it's a source of data. It's a source of information to help us ask critical questions, just like the overall percentage, just like the trend. So really looking at all of the data around a particular group of students, an indicator, helps then to drive the questions that need to be asked.
So the one piece that was interesting to me, and that's a piece that I think the board can have that discussion in the long run as well, is also we're using very much test scores and grades. What we're missing somewhat is actually what our students think as to whether or not we are preparing them for their future. Do our families? So there is some perception data, I think, that might be interesting to be able to sort of dive into, or at least learn more. Whereas, what is it that is there pieces we're missing in regards to what's future ready? So I think that's a piece that jumped out at me that we're missing, actually, of a key component to be able to build into it.
That's another reason why R2 and R3 coming before R1 is probably good, because R3, I think, captures more of that perceptual data. And then you have that complete picture of the perceptual, the academic, and then when you go to do R1, you've already kind of seen that broader view of it, which you don't have yet this time.
Fair. And I think Director Stewart has his hand up.
I do. John, as I looked through the data, I saw a point moving here, a point moving there, a couple of them, multiple points. I didn't see a lot of concern movement or aha movements that caused me great concern or great adulation. Is there anything in that report that you see that causes you a bit of angina at all?
Will you say that last part? It cut out just a little bit.
Is there any part of that report, that any of those numbers that jump out at you and say, oh my God, it's an oh my God figure, that we got to do something fast? Most of them look very incremental, if you will. Point down and point up. Are there any that just really jump out at you and say, oh my God, we got to fix that immediately? Because most of them look like they're just kind of hovering there, if you will.
Yeah, I just pulled it back up just so I could reference, and the board will make sure we get the presentation. You'll see some of the different groups that I highlighted that you'll see is in a red box that was of concern to me. So when I look at our 4-year graduation rate for our English language learners, 60% of our current ELL students not graduating. Now, a number of our current ELL students will continue on to a 5th year. That's a positive thing, but we also know that there's a number of students after 4 years of high school, they're ready to move on. For our students from low income households, having a negative 4-year trend of 3% for on-time graduation with a graduation rate last year of 80%. To me, that's of concern. That's not a huge change, but over 4 years, for the work we're doing and the program systems we're putting in place, to me that's a concern, because I want to see that number going the exact opposite way, and with a 20% gap between what really our mission is of all students graduating and our students from low-income households graduating at an 80% rate. To me, that's a place where we can really focus our efforts. I mentioned our students receiving special education services for 4-year graduation rate. There's a question I have. I'm only concerned if it's students that are dropping out at that point and not continuing. If students are continuing, I'm actually okay with that, because 4 years may not be sufficient, and that 5th, 6th, or 7th year may be needed. And so when I look at kind of just that overall mission part, I would start there. When I go to 7-year graduation rate, if I'm still seeing groups in the 80s, that's always going to cause me concern. That's where our English language learners are. That's where our students from low income households are currently. Even though students from low income households are at 87%, that still, with that amount of time, we should see that definitely within the 90s. So that's a concern.
I see where you're going. The downward trend of the low incomes definitely, when it should be an upward trend, or at least a flat, if at the worst, is a concern. And my point is, I guess, that when they do start to go that way, where do we go to find, what do we need to perhaps be talking to the students and their families? Do we need to be looking at new mechanisms for making this our education work better for them? I think there's a lot of factors we need to start looking at, just beyond perhaps curriculum and numbers. I think we need to start looking perhaps at the counseling those kids might need, because there may be some home challenges. There may be some work-related challenges. They may be working at night. So it's something that needs to be considered, and maybe we need to look at other districts beyond Washington, if you will, that may have had similar problems, and they've found an aha way of doing it.
The other statistic that I would just point out that this district, I don't believe, has monitored as much is mobility. And student mobility factors into both of those subgroups of ELL and students in poverty. And sometimes the why behind it is some of those other factors. And this is a mobile population, I think, in our district. It's mobility due to things that maybe aren't as typical as they are in other places. But I think there's still a factor of looking at what percentage of those students are the same students over the course of a 3-year period, or are we measuring a population of students that may change over significantly? And one way of looking at that is, who is the Lake Washington product, if you will, who a student K-12 or pre-K-12 or pre-K through transition? What does that look like statistically, and what does it look like if a student has come in 5th grade or 8th grade or at some point in high school to analyze statistically? So that's just another factor to kind of throw in when you see that. Given that overall the achievement in this district is very, very high, sometimes it's hard to begin kind of dissecting some of those trend lines when they're a little different even than most districts. Okay, go ahead, John.
It's interesting that you bring that up. That was one of the data points we reported on a number of years ago, and because we had such low mobility, that's probably why it went away, but it's probably the right time to make sure we're taking a look at that because of the change of our community, the change of our student population. We are more international than we've ever been. I mean, there's many reasons why we should make sure we're paying attention to that. A simple question of how many students are graduating that are attending our high schools for 4 years. Like, that's a good question to ask because you've had access and support for that student for all 4 years. So we can only blame ourselves, right?
All right, President Bleaser, you want to call for our motion related to this monitoring report?
What I was just about to do. So I will now entertain a motion for the board to approve the monitoring report for Results 1, Mission of Lake Washington School District, as presented, which was reasonable progress with noted exceptions. And those would have been those things that John had highlighted in regards to the different places that we weren't quite progressing in the way that we should in the focus that should go with the low income, EL, Black and African American, and Latino, and special education. So with that, I will now entertain a motion.
I move approval of the monitoring report as presented.
Second.
So it's been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Carlson to approve the monitoring report as presented. And with that, I will open up for any discussion.
I see no hands.
All right, well, yes. I'd actually like to just say, from the board's perspective, this is sort of the big component that we do, and looking at the big picture of what's happening within the district. And as has been, we have a very high performing, and that's clear. So we do have that being maintained. I think this is that challenge as you now hit that level. How do you really start to move all these groups effectively and accelerate that going through? And so I do think that this is a big component to really start thinking about and how we look at that. So it'd be good to be, it's sort of stagnated, it's sort of stayed somewhat level for the most part this last year. And so we're going to need to really start thinking, how do we do this, especially in our new environment where we're now dealing with a pandemic as well, which is limiting that ability to do some of the things we would typically do in which to really support and strengthen the social emotional well-being of our kids, the connections. We know that that's a key component in keeping our kids healthy and engaged and succeeding in what they do. So I guess the one piece, if I were to look at this as sort of where some recommendations where we need to go for next year, besides some focus, is sort of highlighting what Director Stewart had mentioned. How do we build in some of the perceptions of our families and involve them into these solutions more effectively? And so that's part the board can do with linkages and connections and focus groups in which to be able to get a better idea of some of those policies or what we could do from there. So I would encourage that. So I guess with that, that's where, are there any other concerns from board members in regards to the progress, any things you want to see? I just want to make sure that this is that opportunity that we build it into it. All right, hearing none, I will now entertain a vote. All those in favor to approve the monitoring report for Results 1, the Mission of Lake Washington School District as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So thank you very much for all that work and putting that together. I do think there's some additional, how do we work with those indicators going forward, especially for next year. So appreciate that. And with that, we will now move to our next item on the agenda, because not only do we have to have results, building and space, in which to be able to educate our kids. So our next item on the agenda is the 6-year capital facilities plan.
Yep, and we have a couple of things in this section, starting with that capital facilities plan. And this is that big scale, long-term plan that continues to guide the district and has for many, many years. With the next iteration of that, as many people know, we've also had our facility advisory committee working over the last 6 to 8 months. And those recommendations will begin to play into this facility advisory or facilities plan, but those recommendations will be reflected next year, and Barbara will talk a little bit more about that, but just for clarity. And so tonight we have the plan, which comes to you every year for a vote to continue to have that established for our district as a roadmap to the future. So Barbara, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. And I'll just give a kind of a highlight. You have the plan in your packet. As Dr. Saban said, the plan is required to be updated every year. It allows the district to collect impact fees, and those impact fees, the purpose of those fees is to help our district partially pay for the cost of providing new building capacity to serve development. So we shared the draft plan with the board on May 15th and shared additional information with the board on the purpose and the highlights of the plan. And we provided a time for questions and answers at the May 18th board meeting. And so tonight we're presenting the final draft and in front of the board tonight. We did as part of the process for developing this plan, we have to put out a SEPA notice, and so we're required that we have to put that notice out 2 weeks before the board meeting, and we did receive, that comment period ended on Friday, and we did receive one comment, but it did not necessitate revisions to the capital projects plan. Brian will be responding to the group that provided comments. It was specific to our Juanita High School construction project right now. So just wanted to go over some highlights of the plan. The plan has multiple inputs into the plan. It includes our current enrollment projections. It also includes our projects from our current bond measure and our capital projects levy measure, which includes our remaining projects such as Juanita High School, our elementary additions, and then it includes even though our projects were not funded for the February 2018 bond, we are still including those projects in the plan, and that includes Alcott Elementary School, Kamiakin, and a Choice High School in Sammamish. As Dr. Saban mentioned, we do have a facility advisory committee that is working this year to provide updated recommendations to the facilities that we will be building, and we will, because we had to publish this plan prior to those recommendations coming out, we're using prior recommendations, and then next year's plan will be updated with the final facility advisory committee recommendations. So some other highlights of the plan changes is part of the inputs into the impact fees are construction costs, and we've been using the same projects since 2014, and after review with our legal counsel, they recommended updating our construction costs to our recently bid and open projects, and so we've done that in the plan, and then we also have updated, every year we're required to update the key drivers of the plan, which are our multifamily and single family student generation rates. And in this year's plan, the single family student generation rate decreased, and primarily that was because our large single family development, Redmond Ridge East, came off the list as it was outside the 5-year window. So we reduced the single family student generation rate. The multifamily student generation rate did increase. We're seeing more students from our multifamily units, so that does drive up the fee. And then another key driver is our capital bond rate. And because we our capital bond was not approved, that actually drives down the credit, it drives down the tax rate, which reduces the credit, which also drives up the fee. So the fees in the capital facility plan, it establishes an impact fee of $15,070 for single family, which is a 10% increase over the prior year. And that's a similar increase that we saw last year. And then our multifamily fee increase or fee is set at $2,161, which is a 55.7% increase. Last year, we saw a significant increase in the multifamily fee of about 122%. And one specific note, as part of the plan, you'll see in our calculation, I highlighted that in information that I sent to the board earlier. We did provide a district adjustment in the multifamily fee because as we increase the construction cost, updated them to current costs, it did provide an increase to those fees, and we wanted to make sure rather than having a 94% multifamily student or impact fee, that we would stair step the fee over multiple years. And so we did provide an adjustment to that fee this year, and so you'll see that reflected in the plan. So those are really the key changes and key drivers of the plan from last year. And I think I will open it up to questions if there's any questions. And any questions or any other things that you want me to highlight?
So, Barbara, on the stair step, if we're doing 55% this year, then next year is 40%?
Well, and each year we do have to recalculate the fee. So we will look at that. And so instead of providing a 50% discounted share, which is what we normally do, we're providing a 60%. So it's anticipated that we'll go back to providing that 50% discount next year. So the fee still may change depending on the inputs that go into it. If student generation numbers continue to increase, or if the student generation numbers decrease, then that will also impact the base fee.
And so when is the impact fee charged to a development?
That's a great question. So the process after today, after the board adopts the plan, then it goes before King County for review. And then King County has a process. Let me get my dates out here. So it goes to King County Technical Review Committee actually this week. And then by mid-June, King County approves it. And then it goes through each local jurisdiction. So our city of Kirkland, city of Redmond, city of Sammamish has to also adopt the fee. And they typically do that in the fall, in the October, November timeframe. And then the fee actually gets implemented. So this fee will get implemented January 1st of 2021.
Okay, the reason I was asking is I'm trying to wrap my head around, if we stair step, then what that means is that any developer who files their development this year pays less in impact fees than the cost of the students who their development will generate in our district. And I'm trying to see why we don't want to just charge them the actual costs of educating the children that will come out of their developments.
Right. And anybody who files their permit this year actually pays this year's fee that was set last year, which is that 1388 number. Mm-hmm. So it's anybody who files their permit next year pays the $2,161 fee.
And the year after that would be $2,000, et cetera. And so what we're doing is we're incentivizing them to file their plans right now so they can pay the minimum fees. I'm trying to understand why it's valuable for us, because we're going to have to educate the kids coming out of these developments, to let them pay less than it will cost us to educate the kids coming out of these developments.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance between, we know that last year when we did have
our multifamily fee went up about over 100%. We did get additional questions from our development community, and just, concerned about, they have concerns as well about the stability of the fees and predictability of the fees. So we do answer their questions, and ultimately our jurisdictions approve the fee, which they did last year. But those are the questions that can come up.
We do have an expert with us this evening. If we want to ask some in-depth questions, Denise Stiffarm is on the meeting with us in case we had more questions for impact fees.
Yeah.
Director La Liberty?
Yeah, my memory is that our multifamily impact fees are amongst the lowest still of our neighboring district. Even with these changes, this 54% increase, would we still be amongst the lowest?
Yeah, and I have some statistics on last year's fee, and the next lowest fee was charged by Kent School District, which is $23.45. So, and then the highest, there's two districts that have significantly higher fees in the $14,000 to $20,000 range. That's not typical. Most fees are in the $3,000 range for multifamily.
Are you done, Director La Liberty?
I think so.
He's thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Denise, do you have any comments on these two questions?
Yeah. So let me make sure I'm off of mute here. So with regard to the question about the multifamily fees and those higher increases that are in other districts, there are districts in the south end of King County that have multifamily developments with between 4 and 5 bedroom units. And so they're seeing a significantly larger number of students residing in those units. And so that's why you're seeing some of those $14,000 to $20,000 fees. The Lake Washington School District has typically had the lower student generation rate, and that is continuing, even though you are now starting to see some more students residing in those units. But you and the North Shore School District have very similar student generation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director La Liberty. I can see you're looking and want to say something.
Yeah, well, so, if the pushback we get from the development community is, look, we need this to be consistent and we need to be able to plan around this. I get that. They're making long-term, they're planning a horizon as many years out. But even if we were to do the full increase, we're well within the bounds of where, all the other places they're developing. I'm really struggling with why we are giving a discount on this.
So let's hold. Since we don't have a motion on the floor at this moment.
Yeah, I understand that. That wasn't a question. Yeah. Thanks.
So if we can just go into questions, so any questions to clarify that, and then we can have a motion on the floor, and that's when that things, because then you can amend the motions, you can do different things. So I'm just trying to make sure that we have the process with that.
Thanks.
So Barbara, if I remember right, the trend is we have a formula that we follow, and we've had years where we've actually decreased the rate, and then we've increased it because that's what the formula did, correct?
Yeah, we have not had in the last 6 years, the fee has not decreased.
I believe for the multifamily, it has. I think there were 2 years where it decreased. Single family, I think that, but I just remember that chart. I'm trying to clarify if I'm right.
Yeah, my eyes are bad, and I can pull up the chart as well, but my eyes are bad, and you're right. The 2019 fee 2 years ago decreased by 14%. And it actually decreased 2 years in a row, from 2016, it decreased in 2017, and again in 18, and then it increased. That was when we had our 100% increase. So
and then we had the big increase after that stair stepping or this decrease. So we decreased without stair stepping.
Correct.
And so I understand where the recommendation is coming from in regards to wanting to undo that, but I think there are some other issues at play in the context in which we work. So does anybody else have any questions around wanting to ask Barbara in regards to this, or do we need to move to a motion in which to be able to hold discussion at the board level?
Or for Denise. We have Denise.
Or for Denise, I'm sorry,
questions.
yes.
Denise, yeah.
Mark had a question.
Denise, a question I would have is there any concern that the way we've calculated these fees are all within the legal boundaries in our agreements that we have in regards to, we are not artificially inflating these fees, I guess is what I would ask.
No, absolutely not. It is entirely within the framework of the adopted formula that is adopted in the ordinances. And it is just a reflection that your multifamily student generation rate is higher this year. And there is a reason why you update your plan every year and update those inputs so that you do stay current with what is going on in your district.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful. Director Stewart, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. Just going back to Chris and Eric's comments, if I understand correctly, basically every year we have to play catch up because it's the nature of the beast. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not clear when you say every year we have to play catch up. Every year.
The idea that it seems like the fact that they're building, and so we don't. We have to base our figures on what the previous number was. So basically, it's kind of a catch-up game, and it's the nature of the beast as opposed to the formula.
Well, the formula isn't. The formula is shown based on that we have projects that we need to build, but what the drivers in the formula are current construction costs, current student generation rates, current bond rates. So those are things that we update on an annual basis, and the only delay is the fact that we're adopting it now and it doesn't go into effect until January. So there's that little bit of delay, and it takes 9 months to 6 months to get the fee implemented, and then it goes into effect this year.
It's a very
so I'm still not
fixed
sure
formula,
I'm answering
though.
your question.
It's a very fixed formula that's just given, the numbers are plugged in for what it is given from year to year, so it's not something that's manipulated to try and do cause and effect. It just is captured differently depending on what those various variables are from year to year, which swing wildly in our district because of the amount of construction and the type of construction and the different areas of the district that have been factored in over the years. Denise, do you want to speak?
No, I wasn't suggesting that it just sounds like to me that because of the nature of the beast, we have to gather the information now, and we'll be raising it for a future date. It requires us to play catch up, regardless of the formula. So it's just a matter of it is what it is.
Okay, Director. Actually, I'd love to call for a motion and we can move to discussion. But Director Carlson, do you have more questions?
Yeah, one more question for Barbara. And that is, historically, do we revise this literally annually?
Yes, every year. We're required to revise it every year.
Okay, and it's according to a formula that is set by the district or by the state?
It was set by King County and a coalition of both, districts and jurisdictions and developers. So the formula was set. Yep.
And it sounds to me like it's the county's problem, but that's becoming discussion. So go ahead, Siri. I'm going to move to discuss this, but I'm not. What motion do you need me to make?
Well, Director Olin already has his hand up, so I'm going to let him ask his question first.
Just quick clarify. I want to make sure I have this right. Multi-family fee, that's per unit, not per bedroom, correct?
The fee is per unit, correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Stewart, I see your hand is up. Do you have another question?
No, sorry.
Okay. So with that, I'd love to entertain a motion that we adopt the 6-year capital facilities plan 2025 as presented. We then move to discussion. If there are any changes desired, it would be put through as an amendment. And then we'd have a discussion on that amendment, and then we would determine that, and then we'd come back to doing the motion. Or you can amend the motion right now. It is your choice. It is however it is. So that I am ready for a motion.
I move approval of the capital facilities plan as presented, except for removing the district adjustment to the multifamily residents.
I second that motion.
So it has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Stewart that we adopt the 6-year capital facilities plan as presented, with the exception to amend the reduction in place for the multifamily residences, to actually do the full reduction. Is that the right way to say it? Other way.
Full amount.
Full amount.
The full 50% share.
The full 50% share. So with that, I will now open that to
Just so we're clear, that full 50% share is $2,701 per multifamily unit.
Correct.
That's what I intended.
Okay, so that is the motion on the floor. Now I open that up to discussion.
Yeah, I think I very much concur with Eric's proposed amendment, simply on the basis that if the developers are worrying about the variance of this number, their issue is with the King County, not with our school district. We're just trying to collect the dollars that it's actually costing to educate the children who they are generating for us. Especially given that it's only $2,700 per unit, knowing the prices per unit around our cities, that does not strike me as an outrageous burden upon the developers, and I really don't think that we should harm our kids' education in the name of saving them, making their monies more predictable. I just don't see it as our problem, and I know that sounds heartless to the developers, but I care about our kids more.
Would it be helpful if we asked Denise to characterize what the steps are available to the developers if they don't agree with a fee? Denise, yes. Can you just walk us through just what that looks like from that other vantage point?
Yes, absolutely. Sure. So when the Board of Directors adopts the capital facilities plan, it is adopting the plan with a recommended fee to each of the jurisdictions that collect fees on behalf of the district. So for you, that is both King County and your cities. As those jurisdictions move forward to review the capital facilities plan and update their school impact fee ordinances, they go through a public process, just like you do, advertise the action and take comment from any parties, including developers, throughout that entire process. And each jurisdiction has the ability to adjust that fee downward, so giving a discount larger than the 50% that is in their ordinances. I have seen jurisdictions do that before. Your jurisdictions have not done it, with the exception of when the city of Kirkland first implemented a school impact fee ordinance. They did step it in, and that's been years ago now, and that artificial cap was removed after the initial years. So short answer is there are opportunities for those jurisdictions to make some further adjustments, but they do look to the district's recommended fee as a first basis.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I would just like to say is, I would support the amendment and the proposal, the motion as it came through. as we have done a lot of looking at our facilities and building, we do a lot of discussion with our community during the time we do bonds and levies that we talk about. We work very hard to maximize where we can in all the places so that we diversify where those funds come in which to build our schools. So I am hard pressed at this point to give a decrease at this point when we already maintain one of the lowest multifamily rates that exists, and knowing that lag time that comes in. So appreciate always the support of what happens with developers and the role they do play, and it's a partnership. I do think this is one of those areas that we have given discount based on those rates, even when we knew we had increasing enrollment and challenges, because that's what the formula said. I think we hold to that, and I would support the motion as put forward. So, and that would be why.
Okay, sounds like you're
Any other
ready to
discussion?
vote.
Okay, with that, then I will call a vote on the adoption of the 6-year capital facility plan as presented with the amendment to take the full amount for the multifamily rate. It's the best way I can say that. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. All right, well, thank you very much for all your work with that. It's exciting to get that done yet again.
Thank you.
Yes. And we will see it again when it comes back.
And Brian and his team did a lot of work on this as well. So I want to thank Brian for all the work he did too. So
wonderful.
And we will get the revised draft, and that is what will go to the county on Friday. So thank you.
Thank you. And we look forward to the Facilities Advisory Group provides the next step at the next phase. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, so our next step is the strategic plan connection, which I believe is going to be Barbara again as a facilities update. Oh, Brian.
And Brian.
And Brian's going to give the presentation. We haven't had a facility update since February, so we thought it was time for you to kind of get a update on our projects that are going on.
A normal, plain old, regular update.
Exactly. So I think Brian's going to share his screen and go through it.
Okay. So let me know if you can't hear me or see the presentation.
Nope, we can see it.
Okay, here we go. So this is where we align with the effective use of resources. We'll talk first about our 2016 bond projects. Again, just as a reminder, we have 3 new schools: Barton Elementary, Baker Elementary, and Timberline Middle School, along with 3 projects that are rebuild and expand, which are Juanita High School, Peter Kirk Elementary School, and Margaret Mead Elementary School. And then 2 other projects, Explorer Community School and the Old Redmond Schoolhouse. So we'll talk Juanita High School. This is an active project. Phase 1 opened this school year. Phase 2 is scheduled to open, in the fall. This is one of my favorite pictures of Juanita, because you can see the mountains, the trees, the fields, the Performing Arts Center, the completed educational building, and then just a little corner of the field house there.
And the school buses too.
Yeah, and the buses. Just as a reminder, the gray portion is the Phase 2 connection to the Phase 1 building there. Accomplishments, interior finishes are complete as of May. The bus loop and paving of the east parking lot was completed in May. The connection, the second floor, third floor connection from Phase 1 to Phase 2 is complete. We expect certificate of occupancy in June. We'll begin to remove the temporary portable in July. Tennis courts will be rebuilt in August, ready for fall, and the Phase 2 building will open in September. This is another favorite picture of mine. This is the east side of the phase 2 looking west. And you can see the contractors are very proud to have all their paving completed in May. And so that's why you see quite a bit of paving there. On the top right is the ceiling grid and some of the finishes going into a standard classroom. And bottom right is the connection from phase 1 to phase 2. And then inside there is the courtyard. There will be a gate that closes once the kids are in school. There's a gate that will close there. Next is the old Redmond Schoolhouse, and you can see some of the painting going on in this picture here. This is scheduled to open in the fall. Accomplishments, our envelope improvements are complete. Upcoming, we'll have our interior finishes complete here shortly. We expect temporary occupancy in July with move-in beginning shortly thereafter, with classes starting in September. And on the left is some of the new roof, the metal cladding there in red and cap, along with the new roof. On the top right is one of the typical classrooms with the flooring going in and the ceiling grid going in. And then bottom right is the east view looking west of the new roof, new downspouts with the painted and restored windows. And here, just as a reminder, starting with Explorer and moving left and then down is the completed projects, Barton, Baker, Timberline, Mead and Kirk. So from a finance update, we have $429 million planned for revenues, of which we've received 430 and $4 million still in SCAP that we'll receive over the next 2 years. Expenditures are, the project's on schedule and the expenditures are on track. We're at about 93% spent as of the end of April. So now the 2019 six-year capital levy. These projects include the elementary school additions at Twain, Rose Hill, Franklin, and Carson, with also a 20 classroom addition and core expansion at Lake Washington High School. Here is a rendering of the new classroom addition next to the Performing Arts Center that's making a new courtyard. Accomplishments to date, the largest accomplishment is that our partners with Lighted Construction has moved forward and are on schedule during this pandemic. They've done a really good job here. We're ready for temporary occupancy, we think, in August. That's a few weeks later than originally scheduled. But we're on track to open September 2020. And here's the actual picture of the building with the courtyard beginning. The enclosure's complete. I may have mentioned this before, that we actually got the exact same lot of brick from the original build, that there was still enough brick left over. We went back and found the exact lot. So that's good news. And then I'm not sure exactly how they did it, but Lake Washington was able to turn the sky purple for this picture. And this is just a close-up of that envelope. On the top right is a ceiling grid installation, and then the bottom right is the casework going into a typical standard classroom. For the core expansion rendering, we have a new gym and interior commons expansion plan. We have our permit received back in March for the commons, and in May we got our earthwork permit to start for the gym expansion. In June, we'll be removing the portables, and we expect to complete the commons expansion this summer, and should have the new gym foundations completed in September. For the elementary school additions in the Kirkland area, we're talking about Franklin, Twain, and Rose Hill. Our permits, our land use permits were approved in May, so that's great news. Our good neighbor information, we usually have a good neighbor information meeting before construction starts, but we're sending out an information mailer instead due to the COVID restrictions. Permits are issued in June, should be issued in June, and we should start construction in July. For the elementary school in Sammamish, we're talking about Carson Elementary. The schedule for Carson trails 1 year. So we're going to pick up schematic design was completed last August, and then we'll restart our design development here in July. For safety and security upgrades, the elementary school security cameras will go in this summer, and then the high school entry modifications at East Lake, Redmond, and Lake Washington High School. Designs were completed in May, and construction will begin this summer. For the portable classrooms, the relocation of the Lake Washington High School portables, 6 are going to Rose Hill, 2 to Kirkland Middle School, and then 2 to Inglewood Middle School. And then we're adding 10 portables, 1 at Sandburg Elementary, 3 at Thoreau, 3 at Frost, and 3 at Bell. And for the 2019 levy, we have planned proceeds of $144 million, of which $24 million was remaining SCAP funds. So those are received today. We expect spending to pick up this summer with the Lake Washington High School gym and commons moving forward, and the elementary school additions breaking ground. For communication, new to this page is we have a couple virtual tours, one of Juanita High School and one of the Old Redmond Schoolhouse. And then, like I mentioned, we have our Good Neighbor information mailers that are going out here in June. And then, of course, our Building on Success webpage has all of project information. And we have a Let's Talk button that you can submit questions to when you get to these pages. And I think that's it. So we have time for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Brian. I have to say, for me, I get a little teary watching because it's exciting and it's sad all at the same time, because we love those beautiful buildings and we wish we had people in them right now. Questions or comments from anybody?
I'd just like to say thank you for keeping these all moving through and bringing them in under budget. And it's a lot of work in a very short time frame, and the process seems to work very well. So thank you for all your work and coordinating that through a time.
You bet.
Any other questions or comments? So with that, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation and the update. And with that, I guess our next item. Oh, that was the superintendent report, wasn't it? Or do you have an additional superintendent report you would like to do?
I don't. We took some of the items that would typically be part of that and moved them to be earlier in the agenda just for everybody's information. No, I guess, we're all just watching some of the current things and making sure that our communities are staying as safe as possible. And, doing the same thing, even though we're working remotely. We're paying attention to things for people who may be on site, but I don't have anything other than we have 3 weeks left of school and we're going to get to the end. We're going to do our very, very best, and we have people working really hard to help kids learn. And the discussion tonight was also helpful as we think forward. I think, it's just such a different environment. People are very mired in the here and the now, but we also have to be looking and planning forward, which many people are doing. We are sending out weekly informational pieces. Mike will be putting out more on summer planning and trying to give constant feeds so that people know that there are huge plans underway as we anticipate what school looks like next year. And I guess I just continue to look at it kind of from a national vantage point too, as I interact with my colleagues across the country, and we're part of some different panels and things like that, and we are struggling with the same questions that districts across the nation are struggling with. Our resources are such that we are able to provide many of the things that our students need, and we are very fortunate in that way, but we still face the same problems and kind of conundrums that everybody is, just given the unknowns of the circumstances. So hopefully we'll continue to see some opening of our communities, and with that, we can couple up the safety measures that we know we're beginning to see emerge for examples and ways that people are beginning to problem solve, and we're just going to keep moving forward. That's it.
All right. Thank you. And so with our next item is board member comments. Is there any board member who has a comment they would like to make? And Director Sage.
Yes, so bear with me while I pull up my notes here. I just wanted to point out that today was the first time since schools were closed in March that boards in Washington State have been allowed to take action on anything other than essential, basically pandemic-related business. And this evening on the consent agenda, the board approved operational expectation 9 regarding district communication with the community. And I agree, the district is in compliance with the current policy. I would, however, like to point out that the board may want to consider revisiting the policy language to ensure that strategic two-way dialogue and connection with the community is really emphasized, and that we think of underrepresented members of our community and the need to ensure that we hear all voices and perspectives. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Great. So what I would like, as we move forward and draw out the board work plan for the upcoming year, that will be a good time in which to be able to add that conversation in and be able to build through what that is and those components as we revise these policies as we go forward as well. So thank you. We'll make sure to take note so we can do that. Any other comments? Hearing none. With that, our next upcoming board meeting, it will also be held remotely. We actually have a study session set on June 8th. And Dr. Saban, correct me, I believe we're also going to be holding a board meeting as well on June 8th at this point, so we can add back in the PTSA.
Yeah, I think we could do it either during part of the study session agenda or call it a short board meeting, either way, and we can talk about that. We just want to be able to make those announcements prior to the graduations that are going to be happening.
Okay. And that will continue to be held remotely at this point in time.
Correct.
And with that, I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn the June 1st board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It says been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director LaLiberty to adjourn the board meeting. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Well, with that, our meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.